I've lost myself now. Oh boy. Well, there's Sue.
Tara, you're black for some, oh, there you are.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on.
You
I was
fixed
fine.
something.
I was fine till you people put that thing up, and then.
Hey, good evening, and welcome to the Plymouth Area Virtual Forum on how it works in Beacon Hill. Tonight, our guests will give an overview on how the Massachusetts legislature works, how to advocate for the passage of bills, and an opportunity to ask your legislators about local issues and how decisions are made. I'm Vedna Heywood, a board member of the League of Women Voters of Plymouth and the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Tonight, we will begin with Jennifer Muroff. As a legislative specialist with the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, Jennifer advocates for state laws related to gun violence prevention, immigrants' rights, and most recently, police reform and accountability. She is also a Legislative Action Committee co-chair and a board member of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence, a coalition of 100+ member organizations working to eradicate all forms of gun violence through the Commonwealth. Recent legislative campaigns include the Extreme Risk Protection Order, automatic voter registration, Yes on 3 transgender rights ballot question, the Safe Communities Act, driving families forward, and more. Jennifer, a board member of the League of Women Voters of Needham, hosts local, state, and federal officials as their legislative envoy. In her role, she has helped incarcerated people of the Norfolk County House of Corrections vote. Jennifer was a founding member of the Temple Shalom Social Justice Committee. When Jennifer isn't championing human rights for all, she is driving her 2 sons to sports practice and games. Let's begin with Jennifer.
Thank you, Vedna, and thank you so much to the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters. What a delight to be with you all this evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started on how the legislature works. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Great, awesome, thank you. Great, so blue skies over the State House, not today, but most days, right? Here we go. So we'll start with an overview. I thought I'd just give you the basics on how bills become law in Massachusetts, and then we can work our way over to advocacy steps. So first, a general overview. Right now, we're in the 192nd General Court, and the session lasts as a 2-year term. It just started in January, and it lasts for 2 years. It is a full-time legislature, one of 10 nationwide. The House has 160 members. The Senate has 40 members, and I feel so privileged to be alongside all of these esteemed panelists with us tonight that represent the Plymouth area. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to working with you this evening. So this session, there were 6,664 bills filed. Last session, I think it was closer to 7,500 bills. So there are a lot of bills filed. So the bills are filed by House members, by Senate members. They can be filed by the governor, and they can also be filed by you. If you work with your legislator as a citizen, they can file something on your behalf. Some important session milestones. February 19th was the deadline to file bills this session. November 17th of 2021 is the last day of formal session for this first year. February 2nd of 2022, is called Joint Rule 10 deadline, and that's the deadline for all committee reports. So all bills have to be reported out of committee by February 2nd, 2022. And then July 31st, 2022 is the last day of formal sessions of the court. So if folks do have questions, they're welcome to type it into the Q&A feature. And I know my esteemed panelist colleagues will be able to answer them as well. So the House leadership now, you may have read in the news that Speaker DeLeo had retired, and we now have a new speaker, which is Ronald Mariano of Quincy. We have Majority Leader Claire Cronin of Easton, and we have Minority Leader Bradley Jones of Reading. The Senate leadership is Senate President Karen Spilka of Ashland, Majority Leader Cindy Cream of Newton, and Minority Leader Bruce Tarr of Gloucester. Okay, so basically bills are filed in the House or the Senate, as I mentioned, and they are given a docket number. So right now you're seeing SD and a number or HD and a number, and they stay that way until they're assigned a committee, and then they are assigned a bill number. So right now we're in a phase of requesting co-sponsors for bills. And what's new about this session is that the House deadline has been extended and matches the Senate, which the rules are that anyone can co-sponsor a bill until the bill is reported out of committee. And previously there was a deadline to that. So now there's ample opportunity to request that your legislator sign on as an official co-sponsor of a bill. So when it's assigned to a joint committee and it receives a bill number, you may have heard about some of the joint committees, and I know some of the esteemed panelists on this webinar have been assigned to Joint Committee on House Ways and Means. You may have heard about the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security, and you may have heard about the Joint Committee on Elections Laws, which one of the league sponsor priorities this year, LWVMA sponsor priorities, is the Votes Act, and that would be in the Joint Committee on Election Laws. So every bill has to have a public hearing, and that's when you hear when the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts requests that you attend a hearing. It's usually in front of one of those joint committees when they do have a hearing. And we expect those, and maybe my colleagues on the call could say, more about this, but we expect that to take place in September is the guess. So post-COVID times, hopefully when everyone's vaccinated. Right now, the hearings, we can submit written testimony, for example, on the House version of the budget or the Senate version of the budget. We can submit written testimony electronically by email, but hopefully we can get back to in-person hearings soon. So then when the committee meets after the hearing, the joint committees, and there are members from both the House and the Senate side in the joint committees, they have to report out all the bills. And so they can report them as favorably and ought to pass. They can be sent to study, which is a polite way of saying it's not happening, it's not moving along, so it's called sent to study. Or it can be recommended ought not to pass. And in the case of sent to study or ought not to pass, the bills do have to be refiled again next session. So once the bills are categorized that way, they're done for the session, the entire two-year session, and they can't move forward. So if the bills are reported favorably, they're sent to a second committee. They're sent to Ways and Means if it costs money, and we'd love to hear more about Ways and Means from our panelists, so that's some great experience they can share. They go to healthcare financing if related to healthcare and it costs money, or the bills can go to Steering and Policy Committee if there's no money associated with the bills. So then once they're in this second committee of Ways and Means or Steering and Policy, they can move, after they're reported out of that second committee, they can move to a floor vote of the entire body. And legislators can file, debate, and vote on amendments to the bill. So when a bill is scheduled for the orders of the day, it's likely to get a floor vote shortly. And then the bill has to move to the other chamber to undergo a similar process. So conference committee, we've all heard about the conference committees, or you've read about them in the Boston Globe or in Commonwealth Magazine. Basically, if the House and Senate pass different versions of a bill, they have to go into conference committee, which consists of 6 members total. There are 3 House members and 3 Senate members. 2 are from leadership and the ranking minority member from each side. And members cannot discuss negotiations with the public. And when they come up with a final report, which we know sometimes can take months, there has to be a yes or a no vote of the entire final report. It's a straight up or down yes or no vote. They cannot add any amendments at that time. So just to recap, a bill has to go through 3 readings. The first reading is when a committee report is delivered by the House or Senate clerk. The second reading is after steering and policy or ways and means, and then when it's placed in the orders of the day. The third reading is the final review for any legal issues. And actually my state rep, Denise Garlick of Needham, was just named the chair of this committee. And we look forward to hearing more about that committee from her when our local league meets with her. And then the final stage is engrossment and enactment. If the House and Senate pass the exact same versions of a bill, the vote is necessary in both chambers. So you'll see a notification that says passed to be engrossed. That's what that means. So then we're off to the governor's desk. So there are a few options here. He can sign it into law. And usually it takes effect in 90 days if there's no emergency preamble. So if you ever clicked on a bill and read the text, many times in the top section, it'll say to begin effective immediately, which is an emergency preamble. And if it doesn't contain the emergency preamble, it would take effect in 90 days. He could veto it outright. Or, as we've seen a few times in the last session, he can recommend changes to prevent a veto. So he would recommend changes and it would go back to the legislature to work out those changes and propose a new version. And if the governor doesn't sign the bill as the formal session ends, it's called a pocket veto. And the legislature can override a veto with a 2/3 majority, as we saw with the Roe Act and as we saw with the climate bill. I know the league members were riveted by both of those bills. And here we are in action. This was the Extreme Risk Protection Order bill being signed in a previous session. That was 2018. Okay, so as you know, the league is nonpartisan in that it does not endorse political candidates or political parties, but we do take positions and advocate on issues. And this is a screen share of our website where you can find all the bills that we support. So if you go to lwvma.org and click on advocacy, you can see all the bills that LWVMA supports and we work towards getting passed. And if there's testimony, we have links to testimony and so forth. So if a bill does not pass in a previous session, we continue to support it into the new session. And we also work on supporting new bills as well. So if you want to learn more about those bills, you can visit lwvma.org and click on the advocacy tab. I also wanted to share the malegislature.gov website because it's really great now. It's drastically improved and it's really chock full of information. So you can research bills, you can check everything you need to know about your legislator, how to reach them, what committees they're on, their bio, their district. You can also see when hearings will be held. And they also have a feature, My Legislature, where you can track your bills and you'll get a notification of a change in status of a bill, if a hearing's being called and so forth. So if anyone wants more detail on that, I'm happy to work with you on that as well, but it's really greatly improved. It's an excellent tool now. Okay, so now I thought we could talk about effective advocacy. And again, I'd love to hear feedback and thoughts from our esteemed panelists on this. But this is just feedback we've gained from working with other legislators and legislative staff as well. So we have heard that emails are best during COVID. People are answering phone calls. It just may take a day or two longer, but the best way to reach folks is by an email. And if we're advocating for a particular bill, let's use the example of the Votes Act, because elections are so important to our mission as leaguers. You want to include the bill number, the title, your name, and complete address. And personal stories really make an impression. You want to share why this is important to you. So we know that many advocacy orgs typically ask you to click a link to send a form letter or some sort of mass email. But we really recommend that you tailor the email and make it more specific to get more recognized, because it also builds a rapport, and the staffer and the legislator might remember that story and really take it to heart. So the ask is very important as well. So in your email, the ask is what's related to the specific stage in the bill's process through the legislature and becoming a law. Coming up after the co-sponsorship stage, then you'd be asking, we request a hearing on this bill. We want this bill to move forward. So what you also want to research is the current status of the bill and how far along in the process did it get last session. So on the malegislature.gov website, when you're researching a particular bill, on the right-hand side, it will list the numbers of the bill numbers for last session, and you can click on it and it'll show you each stage of the process. So let's say, for example, it was reported out favorably from the first committee and it ended up in Joint Ways and Means. It would show you the status of the bill. Many offices use a constituent email system, and what was recommended to us by Beacon Block, which is Building Leaders of Color on Beacon Hill, those are staffers of color working leadership positions. They recommend one issue per email and not a full list. They find that to be the most helpful, because that first issue in your email is what's going to be counted. Because legislators do tend to count support versus opposed correspondence. They may say, well, I got, 1,500 emails asking for my support on this bill, and I only got 1,000 opposing. So that's a way for them to prioritize. And you really want to build a positive relationship. So for example, if you're working with a specific staffer, or when you do meet with your legislator, we as leaguers, we meet with our legislators pretty regularly, but just to keep that positive relationship going and build that working relationship is so important. I also find it really helpful to ask which staffer is the point person for the bill, and not just recommend speaking with the legislator directly, because the staffers are experts on policy areas, and it's a really great way to build another relationship with the legislator's office. So as advocacy as an organization, I don't know if you can hear the birds chirping in the background here, which is a nice sign of spring. So advocacy as an organization, if the bill is in Ways and Means, you want to be thinking about how does your bill fit into the big picture of Massachusetts overall? So how is this working throughout the Commonwealth, not just in Boston, but in Springfield, in Haverhill, in Plymouth, Northampton, in all parts of the Commonwealth? So what are those implications statewide? And you also can find out in Ways and Means, you can request a policy staffer specific to a topic area. For example, they have a specific staffer who works on policy related to climate and transportation. So you can get some intel that way. And it's really great to build coalition with allied organization. For example, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts works with the Election Modernization Coalition. to produce the Votes Act and work on the Votes Act. And it seems to be effective when we do have a letter from a coalition. It's important. It shows that so many advocacy organizations are behind all the voting reforms. And we have also heard that's been recommended to us by Beacon Block that advocacy days on one issue are much more effective. So if we're just talking about gun violence prevention, or we're just talking about voting reforms, that seems to be an effective advocacy tool. So I have shared some resources, which I can pass along after the presentation. But as I mentioned, the League of Women Voters Massachusetts website, our advocacy tab will show you all of our supported legislation and our testimony. We also have 2 amazing videos we have posted to our LWVMA YouTube channel, and that's How the Legislature Works, which we're talking about now, featuring Beacon Block. And also a few weeks ago, we hosted Beacon Block again to discuss demystifying the state budget process, because that can seem very confusing to follow. So they did a great job. So I'd love for you to check out those videos. And we also offer a citizen lobbyist handbook, which is just like tips and tricks if you're new to the league or your league is new to working with your legislator, just offer some tips and tricks. Some bill-related resources. I offered some links here, as well as links to House leadership, Senate leadership, and joint Ways and Means. So I'll go ahead and stop share. And I didn't know if folks have questions now, Vedna, or we want to wait and ask the questions to our esteemed panelists.
I think we will wait until after.
Great.
But thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Okay, and so now we will go ahead with Senator Therese Murray. I will introduce her. This is the former Massachusetts Senate President. Therese Murray served over 20 years in the Massachusetts Senate. During her tenure, Murray emphasized the importance of our healthcare industry, working on the original healthcare reform legislation and authoring 3 additional healthcare bills focused on cost containment, quality, and access to care. During her tenure as president of the Massachusetts Senate, Murray made international economic development a priority, seeking out partnerships and opportunities for Massachusetts companies and organizations to expand their reach. Seeing the importance of international economic development to the Massachusetts economy, Murray founded MassIgnite following her departure from the Massachusetts Senate. Murray's success in these international collaboration efforts has afforded her the opportunity to speak about economic development around the world. Murray has earned numerous honorary degrees, including a master's degree from Mass Maritime Academy and Westville State University, Juris Doctors from Suffolk University of School of Law and New England School of Law, and an honorary doctorate in health from the University of Plymouth in the UK. She's been awarded the Medal of St. Olga from the Pskov region of Russia, and most recently the 2014 Tip O'Neill Diaspora Award presented to her by Irish President Michael Higgins. Please welcome Senator Therese Murray.
You're on mute.
Senator Murray, you're still muted.
Does that work? Okay. Before I introduce the panelists, I just wanted to make one small correction. When you talk about a bill coming out of committee and you say, or it's sent to a study and it dies, not necessarily. Many bills go to a study and are improved upon or changed before they come out. And if a bill does come out, ought not to pass, which they try not to do a lot of, then the member can actually pull that bill and bring it to a floor and ask for a roll call on that. So, or in committee ask for a roll call. So that's why you see so many go to an informal study rather than a formal study. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Okay, I'm going to begin by introducing the senator first, and then the representative panelists in the chronological order in which you have all been elected. So I'm not putting one in front of the other. So first I'm going to start with Senator Moran, Susan Moran. And I can't see her, but I'm sure she's there. Susan was elected to represent the Plymouth and Barnstable district in May of 2020. She proudly represents the towns of Moran, Falmouth, Kingston, Pembroke, Plymouth, and Sandwich. She's the chair of the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure, vice chair of the Joint Committee on Public Health and Advanced Information Technology, the Internet and Cybersecurity, and member of the Joint Committees on Cannabis Policy, Financial Services, Municipalities and Regional Government, Tourism, Arts and Cultural Development, and Transportation. And Senator Moran has an ambitious agenda for her first full term to help the economy recover through supporting the tourism industry, which we all know is very important to us here, small businesses, and advocating for childcare initiatives, including being the only female sponsor to the just filed Universal Childcare Bill. And thank you for being with us, Susan, Senator. And next we have Matt Muratore. And Matt is the state representative for the first Plymouth district. He is in his fourth term in the House of Representatives. He was first elected to the House in November 2014. And he was a Plymouth selectman from May 2010 to January 2015 and serves as the chairman of the board from 2012 to 2014. He serves on the House Joint Committee on Ways and Means and on the Joint Committee of Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development. Again, very important to us, both of those. He's a ranking minority member on the Healthcare Financing Committee and as assistant ranking minority member on Municipalities and Regional Government. And as ranking minority member, served as a member of the Workability Subcommittee and the Joint Committee on Children's, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. The Ocean Acidification Commission and Skilled Nursing Facility Task Force. And he's currently serving on the Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, which again is very important to us here. And the Executive Committee of the Plymouth County Anti-Trafficking Task Force, Executive Office of Elder Affairs, Citizens Advisory Committee, Ocean Advisory Commission, and the Northeast Fire Protection Commission. Wow. He is represented, he doesn't represent all of Plymouth, and we'll get into that when we introduce the last representative. He represents precincts 2 to 8, 10, 12, 14, and 15. And next we have Representative Kathy LaNatra, who I can see. Hi, Kathy. And Kathy is a small business owner and proud mother of 4. She has a long demonstrated commitment of service to our community as a volunteer and elected official. She served as vice chair of the Kingston Board of Selectmen and a trustee of the Affordable Housing Trust. She also previously served as Recreation Commissioner for 8 years and as a member of the Community Preservation Committee. She has a passion for our senior community, and we've certainly seen that many times over and over. And she continues to be an active volunteer at the Council of Aging. Her experience in government has made her keenly aware of what matters most to residents, and she's honored to work on behalf of the 12th Plymouth District. Now, her committee's assignments are she is vice chair of the Joint Committee on Export Development. She's on the House Committee on Federal Stimulus and Census Oversight, House Committee on Ways and Means. Again, we have 2 members who represent us on the Ways and Means Committee. Joint Committee on Economic Development and Emerging Technologies, which is also important, and the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And last but not least, Stephen. I hope I don't screw up your last name. Xiarhos, right? Thank you. He was first elected to the Mass House of Representatives this past year in 2020. Prior to serving in the legislature, he spent 40 years in law enforcement, retiring as the Deputy Chief of Police in Yarmouth. And he's the proud father of 4 children and is a Gold Star father, having lost his son, United States Marine Corporal Nicholas Xiarhos, while going to the rescue of his brother Marines during combat operation in Afghanistan at the age of 21. And that's how I met Steve. The representative sits on the following joint committees: Veterans and Federal Affairs, Public Safety and Homeland Security, state administration and regulatory oversight, and elder affairs. And he represents the 5th Barnstable district, which is comprised of the entire town of Sandwich and portions of the towns of Barnstable, Bourne, and Plymouth. So as we can see, all of our legislators, elected legislators from this district, are very busy and involved in many, many things that affect us very importantly. So I'm going to begin by putting this out for questions for all of you. And what I'd first like to do, and we'll start with Sue, is to comment on the highlights and or anticipated issues to be addressed in this session. And if we can keep our answers to about 3 minutes, that'll be terrific. Senator?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Senator Murray, and thanks to the League and Vedna. It's thrilled to be here with my legislative partners. I really appreciate this forum, and I appreciate Jennifer's, really detailed background, and I think it just really goes to how important the League's message is, and to all the, please join. You'll learn a lot. The most important thing I want to start with tonight is the Common Start legislation. I have filed with Senator Lewis, Senate 1307. It's my highest priority, and it's the highest priority because we want to get women back to work and also give children access to early education, which has been shown to lead to greater success later in life. The goal of the Universal Child Care Bill is to make childcare affordable for every family. Right now, most young families are paying essentially a mortgage payment or what it costs at UMass for childcare. And my platform has always been based heavily on economic development. When you think about taking that burden off of young families, that's going to really open them up to be able to afford a home, afford their rent. It's going to make lifestyle changes. It's also going to really benefit childcare professionals and childcare business owners. So this is something I'm proud to be the only female sponsor of, and I hope all of you will take a look at Senate 1307. I also want to mention, business and local economics around Plymouth. The COVID relief bill, which we have just worked on, is meant to reduce taxes on unemployment and ensure small businesses won't have to pay taxes on PPP loans. That just went through. I also have filed legislation that'll support state investment in improving access to consistent internet. We all know with Zooming in schools how important that's been. Teleworking, which is something that we've learned have great benefits, not only for our employers, but for our families, and also reducing health insurance costs. And with respect to health, innovative cancer treatments. We have legislation that'll have insurance companies not really be kicking and screaming with that. And then lastly, I just want to mention comprehensive maternal health care. So those are some things that my team has been working on. I think Monica Mullen, my constituent services rep, who I know Terry is very familiar with, and others, is probably here at some point. Please come and see us at the office if you have, at Cordish Park, if you have any questions or comments. Thank you all.
And Matt, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. Thanks.
Okay.
So thank you so much. As you can all see, the senator filed about 6,000 of the 6,644 bills that have been filed, but she left some room for some of us. First of all, I want to thank, Madam President, it's always an honor to be with you at any event, and you've been such a mentor to me over the years. I truly appreciate everything you've done for me personally, but also for the community of Plymouth over the years. And every day I try to emulate everything you've done. You've always been very respectful to people and really worked hard for the community. And I thank you for that. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for all they do. And Vedna, for you too, for putting this together. And Jennifer, we really appreciate that. I think some of the things that we're looking at, I think in this session, it is really still COVID related, I believe. Being on healthcare finance, we just had a meeting with a healthcare policy group last week, and talking about healthcare and where it's going to go post COVID, and costs of medicine and pharmacy costs and telehealth and all this. So I think there's going to be still a focus on all of that. I think economic development will be part of this as well, and how we can help businesses get back on their feet, and particularly in this area, tourism. One of the bills I filed and spoke to the chairman of House Ways and Means about this morning for the budget would be an item that would put in for a study for a convention center for this area. I think it will help with economic development, tourism. It's something we've always talked about. Those that the late Paul Cripps, who used to be in charge of Destination Plymouth, always envisioned having a convention center in this area, somewhere about a 4,000 or 5,000 seat convention center. So we're working with Lee Filson and the Plymouth County Convention Bureau to get this study, this $150,000 study done for this area. And then hopefully somewhere in Plymouth County, maybe in Plymouth, we can get a convention center done. And now that's really going to be a game changer to have conferences, and not just for weekends, but during the week, to have people coming through this area. So I think that's going to be an economic boom. And one last quick thing, one of the things that I believe in this session, last session we did a children's mental health bill, and I think we need to do more about mental health, and I think we will under Speaker Mariano. And one of the bills that I have filed is an act relative to assisted outpatient therapy. It's something personal and dear to my heart. I believe that we need to, in order to go to the next step with mental health, we need to make some changes with adults that have mental health. And if we can be involved as to help the person that is having mental health and help them get the help they need, then I think we need to start doing some of that. So I'm really going to be pushing this act relative to assisted outpatient therapy. So more to come on that. Thank you, Madam President.
I don't know why I've unmuted myself, but someone keeps muting me. So maybe that's a message. I don't know. But Matt, those issues are too, and Susan, are so important. Early childhood, mental health care, which while we have COVID and still have COVID, and people are not able to get together, has really made a big difference. And if we can somehow make some kind of dent in that, and even in telehealth for mental health, it would be a big deal. Now we're going to go to Kathy LaNatra. Kathy, do you need want me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I think I'm good. It's always a pleasure to be here, especially with my Plymouth colleagues and the delegation. So I want to thank Senate President Therese for being here, and of course the League, and Vedna and Jennifer. That was a great presentation. I would love to borrow that. I have to speak to a school next week, and that would be very helpful. Thank you for that. So, as we know, we've all been through COVID, and mental health is a major problem right now. Not even just for our young people that are grieving their friends in school, and our older population that are grieving their grandchildren, right? And they can't see that. So I filed some bills on mental health that center around younger people. I've also filed a bill on mental health that centers around law enforcement to make sure that they're getting the support that they need when they're in a tragedy or a tragic situation, instead of bottling it all in, making sure that they have the avenues that they need to feel better about that situation that they were in. One of the great things, being the vice chair of export development, is I have a bill filed, which is a mass made program, is to promote products here in Massachusetts, which goes hand in hand with export development. Mass made would be manufactured products that are manufactured. Export development could help that, but it could also help our oyster industry. They've run into some issues with some new regulations, and the cranberry industry, we're no longer number one. You always think we're number one, but it's actually Wisconsin that's number one, and we're number two. So I'd like to see that go back to number one, like most of our cranberry growers. Lots to do there, but it's been, I have to say, 85, 95% is constituent services during this pandemic. It's dealing with unemployment issues, which are many. It's dealing with people that have food insecurity, helping them get food on their dinner table. It's, seniors, helping them get their vaccines that are not able to be on the computer. So it has been a whirlwind so far, this second session, which is, we're still in our infancy of our second session. My second session, I'm still in the infancy, but looking forward to, again, to working with my colleagues on mental health and other issues.
Thank you, Kathy. And the police bill that's been filed, I think, is extremely important. And I've been trying to help. Again, another pro bono thing I've been working on with some of the police officers and my nephew is that when people are hurting, they can hurt people. So that peer-to-peer is very important. Having those services, including police as part of that, and the peer-to-peer program within the policing bill that's been filed by Senator Moore, which I hope will happen. And I think Steve you might even want to talk about that one. And I'm going to turn that over to you.
Thank you, Senator. This is awesome. So I love this. This is my 4th month of doing this job. So Jennifer, you taught me a lot. I love your presentation, and I agree with my colleagues on all their bills. You know why they're good? Because they make sense and they're done with passion. And I think that's important. So for me, this is my 4th month. My background is law enforcement, and it's obviously a huge issue. So I think I'm in the right place to help communicate how we can do it better. So I look forward to that. And you're right, behavioral health is huge. I filed 23 bills myself. I co-signed on 200, and I love it. I love it from day to night, every day. But some of the ones that pop out that I wanted to share real quick. The opioid crisis is devastating. I know so many people that struggle. I have it in my own family. And I know so many people that have lost a child. And, I have too. And I know how that devastates a family. So I have a few bills that are in that area of trying to help people and stop the opioid crisis. My own neighbor, 19 years old, died of an overdose 3 weeks ago. So it's very personal to me, the opioid crisis. And you mentioned behavioral health. You're all on the right scheme. I've lived it when I was young, as police officers, we never talked about it. You never talked about the horrible things you saw. But now we do, and we can make that better because our police officers need to be healthy physically and mentally. But also one of my bills in that area are to create like a civilian expert that goes to the calls that involve mental health with police. So all the police officers are trained in behavioral health, but they're not experts. So in Yarmouth, where I came from, we have a civilian who's an expert, and that person goes with the police to these calls and then follows up to make sure that person is getting the help that they need. So that's something I think all police departments should have. I also, knocking on doors and meeting people, I learned about, something like I never thought of, but diapers. So I filed a diaper bill because there's families out there that they have to decide, do they keep their child in a dirty diaper so they can pay for food? Think about what that can do. So I filed a bill that would create some funding so people in need would be able to buy disposable diapers. But in the meantime, I also did a fundraiser, and we were able to raise $5,000 because that problem is something that affects a lot of people. And then I would say 2 more things real quick. The erosion issue is huge in my district. Yeah. Sandwich, those poor people that are losing their homes. It also affects Plymouth, anything like that. We filed some legislation, not only statewide, but that's also a federal issue. And I want to help those people. And lastly, like a personal thing for me is the K-9 Nero bill. It's 3 years ago, April 12th, when Sean Gannon, my police officer, was murdered. I sent him on that call. And 3 hours later, I heard them screaming for help, and Sean had been killed. And the 2 police officers that were with him in that attic, covered in his blood, never came back to work. We lost 3 police officers. But there was also Nero, the police dog that had been shot in the head. And we got him out of that house. I was there. 3 hours later, bleeding, trying to breathe. He was still alive. And none of the paramedics or the EMTs would touch him. They would not help that dog. And I'll never forget that sight. And the reason why is they can't. They're not allowed to legally help an animal. So the Nero bill will fix that. And we need to pass that. There's no cost. I think most people love animals. And basically it lets EMTs and paramedics help an injured animal if they're available. Obviously humans come first. But when they're available, they can treat that animal, they can put them in the ambulance and take them to save their life. So that's called the Nero bill. That means a lot to me and the police officers and the canine units that are all across the state. That's their biggest fear, that something happens to their partner and we don't help them. So those were some of my highlights. And one of you also mentioned, I like to say food security. There's a lot of food in the system, but we got to get it to people. And I volunteer on the side to do that. And we do it every Saturday in Plymouth. Thanks to Matt, thanks to Kathy, thanks to Senator Moran. We are at Plymouth North High School every Saturday, giving out hundreds of boxes of fresh food to anyone that wants them. So please help us spread the word on that. Thank you.
Wow. Well, they have given me a couple of questions that have come in. People have already sent questions in, so I will go to those. But before that, is there, there's another one here. How can individual citizens or citizen groups impact the legislative process? I think that was kind of done in the overview that Jennifer gave. So I don't necessarily think we actually have to give there, but it says, give an example that you've seen that has been successful. Any one of you who have been there for a while certainly know that. Matt?
Yeah, I think what in part of Jennifer's presentation was right on with regard to, all of it was right on, but with regard to the emails, I think that's the most effective way. If you want to advocate for something, send us an email. We try to keep them short though. Sometimes we long. We can't read them all. But if we're getting emails on the same subject over and over and over again, that gets our attention. And I know for me personally, I take it very seriously that I vote on what I think the people want. And if the people want a certain bill, and I may think a little differently, but they want it, and I see all those emails coming in for something they want, then that's the way I vote. So I think, I don't know how my other colleagues feel, but I think that's the most effective way to do it.
Senator?
Sure, thank you. I'll agree. The only piece that I'll add is that calling the office, sometimes there can be a personal element or story that is so memorable. That's helpful in addition to the emails. And with respect to the emails, the other thing that I really appreciate is a lot of times you have sort of an inside view of something that when you look at the legislation, it might seem pretty matter of fact. But if you have a personal story about the reason you feel passionate about something or your experience in the way it can, shake out, that can be so persuasive. So just echoing Matt with a couple of details.
Kathy?
Yes, I was going to say the same. Stories sell anywhere, right? So if I read an email and it's a personal email to me and it's not a form and it's a bill, right. You have mentioned how many bills are filed, over 6,000 bills, over 6,500 bills were filed. We cannot possibly know them all. So I really respect when someone will send me an email of a bill that they're passionate about and it brings it to my attention and I will pull that bill and read it. So I definitely what Senator Moran and Matt had said, story, a personal story, or why you were so passionate about this bill, not just vote on this bill. Give me a reason. And I really respect that when I get an email from a constituent giving me their story and their reason. Oh, sorry, my dog.
He's voting for Nero's bill right there.
I love it.
Funny thing is,
Everybody
we do have
should.
a canine. I don't know if Steve knows this, but my husband is a canine officer, so I do have,
Wow.
but it's not, it's a
Yeah.
little dog. Valet's working tonight.
God bless them. Just real quick, I agree. I also would think of social media. I find that helpful if you wanted to use that as well. But what I like about the emails is it documents your concerns. And we, you know, with my chief of staff, Caitlin Wright, she's amazing. Every single day, we make sure that we receive our messages, we answer them, and we get back to our people. And then there's a kind of a paper trail, you could say, that somebody reached out, they gave their thoughts, personal stories added are great, like you mentioned, Jennifer, but also it's a way to just keep track of all the stuff that goes on and make sure we help our people and get back to them.
Constituent services, that's number one, always.
It is, no
And
doubt.
that's what gets you reelected, right?
That's a good tip.
Okay, good. It's a very good tip.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of questions that, and one of them is the changes made last summer in policing. Was there an opportunity for public comment? And did police chiefs have an opportunity to weigh in? And I don't know who wants to take that first. Sue?
Sure, thanks. Police chiefs did weigh in, and in fact, they spoke amongst themselves. I called police chiefs. I, at one point, had an officer just sort of come to my office in Falmouth. He was from Plymouth and just kind of wanted to have his voice heard in all of the emails he hadn't yet been gotten back to. And so he brought a big giant sign by himself in front of my office, my Falmouth office. And I happened to notice him and just went out, invited him onto my front porch. And, you know, he really talked about what he predicted as the income, the sort of the effect on what he understood it as what could possibly be passed. And that's just one example. We of course got a lot of correspondence, a lot of emails, but that's one of the things, in addition to sort of talking with brass and the administration, that's one of the reasons that I met with Mike Roderick's head of Ways and Means a couple of days ago. And the first thing I talked about is, you know, with this police bill, we talk about the need for police people, men and women, officers, to do policing, and the fact that so much of their job is, as Steve mentioned, and really the whole delegation is about mental health needs. And so I've asked Ways and Means to put money toward adding funds for mental health counselors in police departments. And they're already there, but we need more with everything that's going on with COVID, with opioids. So that's just one of the experiences that I had on that bill.
Kathy, I know you have had some experiences on that bill. You're muted.
Can you just repeat the exact question? I don't think I heard the exact question. Thank you.
The changes that were made last summer in the policing bill, was there an opportunity for public comment? And did the police chiefs have an opportunity to weigh in?
I personally do not think that there was enough time for public comment on that bill. It did pass. It was in conference committee for a long period of time. But I would have liked to have seen more. But I did speak to all my chiefs. I mean, that was one of the bills I received thousands and thousands and thousands of emails. I had people coming to my house about it. So that was one of the toughest votes for me.
And there's a line that sometimes get crossed, as all of you know, between intimidation and advocacy. And I know Kathy had some of that happen to her during that during that bill's passage. And when you feel passionate about something, you obviously want to come and you want to talk to your rep, you want to talk to your senator, you want to get done. But there's a line you really cannot cross. And sometimes people do cross that line, particularly if they're wearing their uniforms when they're doing that. And I think there's a blowback on that. And I think that might have been what happened as that bill went forward too, that a lot of people didn't feel that they were heard. The chiefs did get together and they did put out their statement, but hopefully there'll be some more work on that, and particularly in the mental health field.
Exactly.
As well. Steve, did you want to weigh in? I know you weren't there then, but.
Yeah, I thank you for asking, Senator. I was not there, but I was on the, kind of on the outside looking in. It was a big issue to all of law enforcement, and it's not over with. So I feel very fortunate. Like sometimes I think it's Nicholas, my son, that was killed, somehow putting me in the right place to help. So as we go forward, I'll be sitting on that committee or that commission and can bring, some on the ground experience to help us all make good decisions. We all want our police to be responsible and professional, and most of the time they are. God bless them. I worked with them for 40 years, but they also should have the training. They should have the tools. They should have the behavioral health issues. You mentioned it. Not only, we're helping the citizens, which we need to, but ourselves. And so there's a lot we can do to make it better. And I just think I can help as we go forward.
And I think part of the story that you just told about the one officer that was killed, obviously, but the two that didn't come back to work, the impact of that and what happened to them, those are things that I think people, particularly lay people, don't understand, and don't understand how much that impacts, whether it's firefighters, EMTs, or police, the impact of their job every day and what happens.
Yeah, you're right, Senator. And how would they, right? The average person, that's not their world. But,
right.
I think we all want the same thing. And I can bring, those real life experiences. To lose a police officer murdered 3 years later, now there's still no trial.
Yeah.
Their family is affected forever. But also, like you mentioned, the two police officers that were with them never came back to work. So the damage that gets done from one horrible incident, and if we can prevent that, it's worth every effort.
All right, and we have one more that was here too that says, will there be changes to voting process in the future, and will the protections put in place during pandemic continue? I assume that's voting, early voting, and all of the other that went through. Why don't we begin with Matt? Okay.
Yeah, so we are continuing it through June 30th of this year through the pandemic. And I do believe that we will be taking that up this session, probably early on. And if I was a betting man, I'd say it'll probably go through. I think you're going to see, I think you'll see it happen that will be on a permanent basis. It seems to have worked. And one of the towns, I think it was Duxbury, just this past weekend, they only had one contested seat. I think it was for the school committee, and they had the highest turnout in town elections that they ever had. So, so I think, if it's going to increase people's participation in voting, it's going to be a good thing. But yeah, I think you're going to see it probably permanent. We'll be debating that shortly.
Sue?
One thing I just wanted to add, I think Matt did a great job with the description, but I also think you're going to see more conversations with town clerks and more assistance to municipalities in terms of just really accounting for additional funding that might be needed by additional staffing. Because remember, in the town clerk's office, the town's business doesn't stop while these added hours for, attending, voting, early voting, and going through those mail-in and ballots. So I think that's where the best improvement. So I think, yes, it's going to have, continue. And I also think the process is going to be a little smoother because we've done it. I know I ran during a special election and during COVID. And I think that a lot of these, what the clerks have asked for, we're really listening, and we're going to really be sure that they're well equipped and that the towns are well equipped.
I know that in this last go around, the clerk in Plymouth, in the town of Plymouth, started to hit a wall because they could only use certain computers, and those computers with certain rooms, and so they couldn't share. They couldn't actually put more people on this to do it. So hopefully we'll clear that up, and there'll be the ability to move things faster, because the Secretary of State's office is saying, well, where are the numbers? Where are the numbers? But you can't get the numbers out if you can. And they were working right through, into the night trying to get those numbers down through. Kathy or Steve?
I just wanted to thank Senator Moran for bringing up the clerks. I mean, they really stepped up during this voting season, and they had a lot of work to do. And so they do need the support. They absolutely do need the support.
Steve?
Yeah, and real quick, you're right on. I think people are excited more than ever to vote, and they should be, and get involved with government. Don't sit on the sidelines, get involved, run for office, or at least come out and vote. But you're right, as far as the town clerks, they actually called me and they were concerned about just the things you were saying. So we would have to address those, and Senator Moran is right on top of it, and we'll make it work, because we want people to be heard and get involved with their government.
Okay, well, Evelyn, or are there other questions that have come through that you want to ask, or?
There are other questions. So
Okay.
we have quite a few. So we will start with the first. What does it mean that a term is for 2 years, but the session ends in the summer? And what happens during the second terms, July through January?
Good question. Who wants to, let's see, Matt, you've been there the longest, so I'm gonna let you do it.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know, Madam President, if you ever remember this happening. I'm sure it did during your tenure, but this past year, we went through until January of this year.
January.
So we did not take it off at all because of the pandemic. So, but what typically happens is July 31st, as Jennifer's presentation showed, is that our session ends in year 2. And then basically what it is you're still in a formal session. You still could be called back, but basically it's really to allow people to run for office, because we're elected every 2 years. Unfortunately, it's not every 4 years, it's not every 3 years, it's every 2 years. So that's sort of the reality of it.
And if I could add that came about because it was a push by good government people saying that the lame duck legislators should not be voting on critical pieces of legislation when they maybe have been voted out or not coming back. And that's why that date was put in place.
Yes, exactly right. Yep.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you very much. The next question is, what is testimony in the context that it was presented this evening?
What is testimony?
What is testimony?
For a hearing?
Yes.
Well, I'll take that. So
Kathy?
Sure. So that's when you either come in support, when the bill is in a hearing, you either come in support of that bill and why you support that bill, or you come in opposed to that bill and why you're opposed to that bill. So you're really sitting in front of the committee at a table and you're telling your story, your reasons for either for the bill or in opposition of the bill. And it can be, pre-pandemic, a lot of people came into that, as Jennifer alluded to, but right now it's just written testimony. So you would tell your story in either your opposition or your support of the bill.
Thank you.
So
I just want to add that the information that Jennifer gave about following a bill is where you can sign up to find out the dates. So you might be able to find out by when to submit that written testimony. I know before I was elected, I testified with respect to some things that the Plymouth nuclear plant wanted to do in Holtec, but that was pre-COVID. Now I think if you have an issue of concern, you can contact the league about how to follow, and then you can also contact any of us legislators, and we'll help you figure out how to get your testimony on the right issue by the deadline.
Vedna?
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, as a constituent, how can I learn how the leaders I've elected have voted on an issue? It seems important for constituent engagement to have a sense of how my reps have voted on issues that are important to me. So it's
Anyone?
more transparency, I suppose.
Do you want to check Matt?
Yeah, so I think, again, Jennifer's presentation was just wonderful. It was right on with so many things. And if you go to Mass Legislator, you look up your legislator, you can look up any one of us, you look at the history of what we voted on, what we didn't vote on, what our voting record is. So it's very simple by going on that website to actually find that information. I also know the local, usually all the local newspapers, like in Plymouth, we have the Old Colony Memorial, and they will always put in a section of how every legislator in the area voted on a certain item as well. So it's good, it's good to know how we voted, but it's more important to let us know how you want us to vote. So I would just caution people that it's, again, great to know it, but let us know how you want us to vote on something. It's so helpful.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yes. Next question. When will Massachusetts decide to either follow the IRS and exempt the first $10,200 or not to?
What does that mean?
The unemployment.
Oh, the unemployment.
The House and the Senate have already voted on that within the last, was it the last week? I think it was, Senator.
Yeah.
And I think it's on the governor's desk waiting for signature.
Wonderful.
Correct.
Thank you. Next question. How will the delay in the census numbers affect the redistricting process?
Who's on census committee? Sue, is that you?
I wish. I almost want to hear from you, Senator Murray. It's I can't quite answer that one yet. I'm not on the committee. Matt, are you on?
No.
Okay.
But that's a hard one. I know they're saying, the chair of the committee, I can't think of the name of the chair of the committee, recently came out and indicated that.
Moran and Brownsberger.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was Brownsberger that indicated that we shouldn't really see a delay. They'll make it work somehow, but I'm just not sure how. I don't think they know how yet either.
It's a very complicated process. There are certain machines that are given to the states when they do this in the legislature, in our case, in the legislature, and all the numbers when they come in are run through those. And then, as you saw the last time, there was 2 majority minority districts created because of the numbers and because of the fairness issue. But it'll be interesting to see if we lose or we gain a congressional seat, or we just stay the same, because we have an influx of people into the state, but whether they are going to be counted or have been counted, we don't know, because of COVID. It's just been a real mess.
For any interested league members, you can follow the Drawing Democracy Coalition on social media for updates, but we're part of a large coalition of Drawing Democracy, and we're working with the redistricting committee as well. So please follow them on social. It's Drawing Dem MA for updates, and we'll also be issuing action alerts on all of that.
Thank you very much. Jennifer and I are both part of that on the league end. And lastly, can we hear a bit about how the child care bill will be funded? I'm sorry, not lastly, another question came in. As a young working parent, I attest to paying the mortgage-like bill to send my children or to daycare, and also dismal pay to our incredible daycare teachers. How will this bill help to provide the bedrock funding and the ongoing family subsidy?
So
I guess so. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. One of the things is that this is a bill that is really getting a lot of support and conversation, both federally and in the state. There is a website if folks have questions about some of the details called commonstartma.org. And the proposal in the legislation is that it would be funded over 5 years, that for folks in lower income, it would be, essentially take over a big hunk of the child care bill. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's 50% or something around that. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the number. And then for families not on the lowest level, it would be no more than 7%. So that the ultimate funding over the 5-year period is really going to be left to Ways and Means is the answer at this point. But one thing I just want to encourage folks who are interested is that we're going to be, talking a lot. Senator Lewis and I are looking at starting a children's education caucus. It's probably going to be called something a little bit different. That's one of the things we're looking at. And then we're really talking to, we've just spoken with Senate President Karen Spilka about the bill, and many other folks to really tease out the best way to handle some of the financing, but it's contemplated right now over 5 years. So, and with further discussions to be had with Ways and Means when that time comes.
Matt?
Yeah, I first of all, I want to applaud the senator for what she's doing and taking the lead on this. Full disclosure, I own 3 child daycare centers, one in Plymouth, one in Kingston, and one in Bourne. And this is long overdue, I can tell you as a business owner. I don't know how families can do it. If your child, depending on your age of your child, is going full time to daycare, it costs between $15,000 to $20,000 a year. And I don't know how they do it. So this is so long overdue. And somebody in the question was mentioned about the staff. The staff is so underpaid. It's hard to get staff now. It really is. Even you can adjust your wages, you can offer bonuses, sign-on bonuses, and it's still very difficult. So we're working with the local schools, VOTEX, in their programs, early childhood programs, to really try to get them at a younger age. But we really need to make this more of a profession for people and pay higher, and at the same time allow families to have it more affordable to them, a lot more affordable to them. So I thank the senator for that.
Thank you,
Matt?
Senator Murray. Could I just add to that?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, that's one of the great things about this bill. It provides assistance so that employees of child care centers will be able to advance their degrees and get paid more, similar to public school teachers. And additionally, for the business people, because the profit margins don't handle really all the bills that good centers try to provide, it's going to also provide funding for better centers, better educated workforce, because these folks, they don't stay long, and so you lose that continuity for children because they're not getting paid with what they could with it more advanced degrees. This bill covers all of that. So thanks, Matt, for bringing that up.
And just because I have grandchildren who are in preschool, I know how much it costs, and the burden on the daycare providers as well as the teachers. We require them to have an education. You require them to have an advanced education, and we pay them nothing. So is there a way in the bill to do a loan forgiveness or something for them to get their degrees through maybe through our state and university systems, to provide that for them, and then they work in a system for a couple of years, like we do for some doctors and some other things, careers. That would help them, because they're trying to juggle too and go to school to get the advanced degrees in order to do this work.
I think you should be on the committee, because that's the first that I've seen about
Pro
linking
bono,
that
of
together.
course.
But there are seeds of that, but that's the best way I've heard it put.
No, I think getting our public university systems involved would be helpful, but especially with all this federal money that's coming in. We are going to be receiving billions of dollars in federal money because of COVID. Let's direct that to the places where we see the weakness that certainly popped up in this last year, where the weaknesses are. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be answering these questions. Sorry, any more questions?
Okay, just one more question. Regarding mail-in voting, what steps will be taken to make sure the mail-in ballot is secure and is validated, and that the voter ballot matches the voter? Example, so security number or license included in the ballot, mail-in ballot. And that is the end.
Who would like to? Anybody?
I'll take a stab at it. I'm sure that's going to be part of the debate. I think that you know, along with the funding and how they're going to be secured. I think for the most part, how it went this past year was pretty good from what we heard. Very little issues whatsoever, at least from talking to our town clerk about it and other town clerks. So. But I think that will be part of the discussion, and we'll debate that to ensure that you know, there aren't going to be issues like that. We'll figure that out.
Okay, and any other questions?
No other questions?
Well,
I
does
think one more
any of
just popped up.
No, it's the same. It's the,
is any, and go ahead.
I'm sorry, there is actually one more question, and that is correct. I would like to hear about the legislators speak on how they are planning to help schools and what are their stances on the current education-related bills and funding.
It's pretty broad, Senator.
I'll be quick because I know everyone wants to speak. The Student Opportunity Act is going to be funded, the governor said, so that's going to be great to see how that moves ahead. On my part, I've put some funding locally in Plymouth, Kingston, and Pembroke areas on sort of the tele-zooming piece of school that, you know, the teachers have had to adapt to, and parents, and those are just two quick things to mention.
Anyone else? Matt?
I think it's fair to say that I think every legislator is for education. I think that was shown in the Student Opportunity Act that the senator talked about for the funding of that. More specifically in Plymouth, one of the bills that I just filed on the budget is for transportation, regional transportation money for the town of Plymouth. The town of Plymouth is the largest town in the Commonwealth, single town in the Commonwealth with 103 square miles of busing. And we don't get any regional transportation money whatsoever. So I talked to the chairman of House Ways and Means this morning about that. And we're hoping to, you know, put some language in that talks about any single town school district with 95 square miles or more of busing, which guess who the only town it is Plymouth.
Yeah, I think that's great.
To get some funding. So, you know, it's only fair, you know, when you look at the stats, there are 53 regional school districts in the Commonwealth.
Mhm.
And when you compare Plymouth ranks number 15 out of the 53 for that. So I know Vedna's on the school committee, and, you know, Michelle Badger's been helpful with that. And Gary Costin, who was the business manager before, was helpful with that. So we're hopeful of that. But I think we're all big proponents of school and education and trades and all that.
That's great.
Thank you very much, Matt. I know that you've been working diligently to kind of somehow cure this transportation problem that we have. So thank you.
We have a few more minutes. Is there anything any of you would like to add or bring up that we haven't covered?
I just want to say this was an incredibly well done forum, and Senator Murray, to, you know, for you to moderate this and actually throw your 2 cents in, you know, it gives, I'm thrilled. I feel like it's an opportunity for us all, you know, the whole delegation to work with you for a few minutes. And the other piece of it is we're just so lucky that you can see how well this delegation works and how we put forward our constituents, and we really give each other, you know, turns in terms of, you know, we let each other know about where we're appearing or opportunities for the community where we can all pitch in. So I just feel like just very lucky to be a part of this, this constituency for the people of Plymouth, and just want to throw that in at the end. Grateful.
Yeah, I have to agree with the senator. And we're a little tame tonight too. We can go off the rails a little bit, the four of us. So, but we were a little bit tame tonight. But I think you're looking at 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats here. But that's not in the forefront of our minds whatsoever. It's about the constituents, it's about the work, and it's about what we can do for people. And we can all be very brutally honest with one another. And there are times we agree to disagree, and that's okay. But the majority of the time, we agree on things, and we'll move forward for the betterment of the people we serve. And because that's what it's all about. It's about serving the people. And as I can say, love what we do. We really do. And
I will say, Kathy and I position the men up for pictures, though.
See, I wasn't going to say there are 2 men and 2 women. I was just going to say 2 Republicans.
Get me some more hair. I need some hair like that.
Some with hair, some without hair.
Could
I
I
want to thank the league too, and I want to thank the senator too for moderating. This has been a great forum, and we really appreciate it.
Thank the league.
My favorite Zoom. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Madam President.
No. You go ahead.
I was going to say, this has been my favorite Zoom of the day. This is probably number 5 for me, but we are all very fortunate that we have each other's back and we can run things off of each other, and we can agree to disagree. And we know that our districts come first and our constituents come first. And I feel very fortunate to work with all of you. So I'll say that now because I'm going to make fun of you tomorrow, but no.
Steve, you want to just say?
I do. This is wonderful. And I encourage everyone that's watching to get involved. Like, look at me. I've never run for office in my life, but I served people for 40 years. This is just another way to do it. And it doesn't really matter if Republican or Democrat, we're people, we're trying to help others. And I love it. So shout out to all of Plymouth, but especially my little 9th precinct. I love it. And also remember the food, every Saturday from 9 to 11, the high school kids from Plymouth North are out there with up to 700 cases of fresh food. And the kids are handing it out to anyone that drives up. That you don't have to qualify, just come and get the food and maybe use the food for yourself or give it to a neighbor or take it and save money and use it for something else. So every Saturday, 9 to 11, free.
And
Do you know where precinct 9 is?
I do. I do.
Okay,
I
just
drove-
making sure.
Yes,
And how do
It's
people?
over the bridge, you know.
I do. I drive my motorcycle over there. It's beautiful.
Steve, how can people contribute to the food that's being
Yeah,
distributed?
Great question, Senator. We have enough food. It all comes from farms all over the nation. Basically, it keeps the farmers in business because of COVID. People are not buying as much food, especially the restaurants. So the government buys the food. It goes all over the country. People like us volunteer to hand it out. And on Saturday, a truck shows up at 8:30 in the morning. They unload it, and there's all this fresh food. Come and get it. And the other part that's beautiful is the volunteers that are doing it. To see the high school kids working with older people like me and all of us. It's kind of, not only it's a nice thing to get the food, but it's really nice to be part of giving it out.
And
that's
Madam
what
President,
volunteers-
Madam President, I will say that Mass Military does take donations for food distribution. That would be another way to give if you can't show up in person. Although I agree with Steve, it's fun to show up in person.
I just want to say too, I just want to say that, Steve has done a fantastic job bringing this. I know the senator brought it to the BID Plymouth Hospital, to the employees. We all brought it to the nursing home folks, the workers, all these heroes a few weeks ago. But I was talking to Superintendent Campbell on the Plymouth schools, and there were over 700 families the last 2 weekends that have benefited from this.
Wow.
You're talking
700
about
families.
food, 32 pounds of food. And we're talking about, milks and meats and, fresh vegetables and all that. So it's amazing. It's amazing. So thank you, Steve, for what you've been doing.
Thank you, Steve.
Amen. Amen.
Well-
Teamwork.
Thank all of you. This was a great event. That you've got a couple of minutes left. Vedna, do you have anything else you want to?
No, I just have a closing, honestly.
Okay.
So I would like to thank all of our speakers, moderator, Madam President, and the panelists for an insightful and informative session. We hope that the attendants will take away from this session and that you will have the agency to connect with your legislators and advocate for the bills on the issues that are important to you. This session has been recorded and will be available on our website as well as Jennifer's resources on PlymouthLWV.org tomorrow. We hope that you will share this with your friends and colleagues. And as was previously mentioned, if you are interested in the league, please join. Have a good night, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Stay healthy. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too.
Amen. Thank you.